Welcome to The Art of Likeability, ranked one of the top podcasts in the world. In this podcast, you'll discover how to leverage likability to build stronger relationships, lead more efficiently, close more sales, and keep customers happy while increasing success in your professional and personal life. Let's jump in with your host, Arel Moody.
What's going on, Art of Likeability family? Arel Moody here, your host of the Art of Likeability podcast, where you learn incredible things for all areas of your life. We talking relationships with yourself, with your business partners, with your employees, with your coworkers, with the person who slices you deli meat, for the person who slices you faux deli meat because you're really getting into that vegan lifestyle, but you can't get enough of meat, so you get that tofurkey sliced up at the butcher, but then you have emotional challenges with it because you're like, is this the same blade that cut up a carcass? But you trying to get your vegan on, but you just want some of that meat that's been cut on that spherical blade to just kind of penetrate your vegan tofurkey, so at least that little bit of that flavor's on it, but then you feel bad about it, so you upgrade your life and you're just eating vegan because you care about the agricultural concerns of animal husbandry on the world. That's the kind of stuff you get here at the Art of Likeability podcast. And we bring you guests every now and again. We have a guest with us today. I am excited to bring with you an extremely amazing human being, one of the most intelligent women I've ever met in my life, one of the most caring humans, dedicated to growth. She is someone who any man would be unbelievably lucky to be married to. But I'm married to her. It's my wife, Yolanda. What's up? Say hello.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I feel so great about myself right now.
As you should, because you're a great human being. You're very likable, and thank you for liking me. For those of you who don't know the way that we met, I literally rolled up on her at a party, and I did a usher slide. If you've not seen it, it's when you glide across the ground, and from there, she said, I want to get married to you and make babies, which we've done, which I appreciate. Thank you for
that part of the story is not true.
There's no one to disprove.
That's definitely
like you can't just like, if that's the way I remember our first encounter.
That's not initially what I would say to a man.
How can anyone disprove it? I mean, just consider that for a moment. If I tell a story, you tell a story. Which one is true? In my mind, mine is. So Yolanda has been on a couple of past episodes, but not on a lot. But I thought it would be really cool. She's been doing a lot of amazing work and research along the parenting guidelines, and I think it's very important that, by no means are we saying Yolanda is the parenting expert or what she's saying is 100% the truth and the only truth that exists. There's multiple forms of truth. So she's not the expert. And the reason why that's very important is because ultimately, no one really is the expert, right? Like if there was one person that everything they said was perfect, we'd all be listening to that person. We haven't found that person. It ain't me. It ain't her. We just got some opinions we're trying to share with you. But what I encourage you to do is go out, apply the stuff. Everything we do in a podcast, we always talk about, it's not about the information, it's about the implementation. And we're not here to inform, we're here to transform. Hashtag that. Hashtag it. Hashtagging isn't even a thing people do anymore. So I dated myself. But anyway, the point is, I encourage all of you to try this. And the reason why I wanted to bring Yolanda on the podcast is because she's been doing some incredible work, specifically around parenting. But what I love about the parenting stuff is that it's applicable to not just the mother-child or father-child. It really is about relationships in general. So I was talking with Yolanda. She's been doing a lot of reading, going to a lot of events, and she brought up a topic that I said, you have to come on and share it with us because it's just really powerful and really good. So tell us about interactions, specifically the parent-child relationship, but also how that really blows up into the bigger one. What was the one we were talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things that I mentioned to Rel that I've come across in not all of the books, but some of the books that I've read regarding parenting. I recently went to a conference on parenting. It's the idea of triggers. What is a trigger? A trigger is something that when an event or a person, and it's always in relation to someone, but when you have an interaction with someone and you get really reactive, and by reactive, I mean you get very upset or sad, just very emotional about something a person has done or said, and it seems it's usually disproportionate, your reaction, to what's actually going on. So your trigger is something that's happening to you internally, your dialogue that you are saying to yourself in your head. It could be subconscious, perhaps, but usually conscious, that you are experiencing, and now you're having this strong reaction. Why that's important for parenting is how many parents, including myself, we get crazy when our kids do certain things. And we think it's because it's our kids are doing crazy things and our kids are the reason. And a lot of times, if you take a moment to really reflect when those crazy moments are happening and you're having these really strong reactions, if you ask yourself why I am feeling this way, a lot of times you probably could figure out that it really doesn't have anything to do with the kid. It's not saying everything that happens between you and your kid, it's always it's a trigger within you. Of course, your kid is also involved and they are doing things that for anyone, they might have a similar reaction. But the interesting thing about triggers is that because they are very personal to you, you'll be in a situation, like let's say you have 5 people in a room and one person says something. And with all of those 5 people, one person thinks that whatever the person said was okay. They don't really have a reaction about it. Another person could be just vehemently upset. Another person could think, oh, it's really insightful, whatever that person said. And then the other person has a different reaction. If theoretically everything that someone says or does has nothing to do with you, then I think we would all be reacting similarly. But because we are reacting differently, that would indicate that there's something inside of us that's causing us to react the way that we react. So in parenting situations, I found with my kid, one of the reasons why I got into parenting so much is because my first kid was actually quite challenging. He's almost 5 years old now. And I was constantly angry, but not just angry, rage, a lot of rage that I felt at times. He's an amazing kid, sweet kid, but so challenging, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And it wasn't until I came across this concept of triggers that I realized a lot of it had to do with me and how I saw the world, how I saw myself as a mom, how I saw himself as a kid, what I expected motherhood to be like, what I expected my child to be like. And it's a lot of expectations in there. And also things that happened in my own childhood that would flare up like crazy when I was with my kid. And when I was able to recognize that these things are happening and those are my triggers and stop blaming my child for me being angry and overreactive, I felt that I was able to better connect with my kid and also better understand myself. So I think triggers are definitely something we all can be aware of, and they're just not applicable to parenting and the child relationship, but it's applicable to any relationship you're in.
So you talk about that idea of someone responding and then you disproportionately acting a certain way. Mm-hmm. So to make that real, give me an example and give everyone listening, what's an example, like put us in a scenario and something happens and someone reacts a certain way. What would that look like and how would we see it if it's a trigger?
Okay. So an example of that, I'll use myself as an example. So my child, one of the things that I get really triggered by, or I have more so in the past, is whenever I felt he wasn't listening to me. And it could be something as simple as not brushing his teeth or not picking up his clothes off the floor.
So you say, I want you to go pick up your clothes.
Right. I tell him to go do that. And he just looks at me, or he thinks it's funny and he runs around the house and I have to catch him. And it turns into this whole ordeal. And then I have to figure out a way to get him to do this thing. So why that's a trigger for me is that I feel like I have zero control over him. I feel powerless. And that's triggered from my own childhood. And so how I react is sometimes I've screamed at him and I've yelled at him because he's not doing what I ask him to do. And for you listeners, some of you are like, oh, that makes sense. That's totally reasonable, right? I would do the same thing. But it really isn't if you think about it. So what I had to do in that situation is when I learned about the idea of triggers, I actually took a moment to realize that this is my thing. And I've left the situation at times if I needed a few moments, because the number one thing you really should do is compose yourself. So you could be a parent that is in control of at least what you're saying. And but there were times that I was so angry that, he cried because of how I reacted to him. And that really, like a kid not listening to you, that I don't think that's a really, like, to get angry enough to cause your kid to cry. I don't think
you gonna pick up your pajamas or I'm gonna bring the pain. I'm gonna bring the pain in your life. You better pick up them pajamas, boy. Like, is that what we're talking about?
No, I think that would have made him laugh. I'm talking about you're scary and he's crying because he's really scared of the way you're screaming at him. I don't think that's an appropriate reaction. And it's overreactive.
Right. And the thing about triggers, when you were teaching me about it, the reason why it was so empowering to me is it's not just parent-child, right? You could be interacting with a coworker or a business partner or someone, and they do something and you just think like it's the most unacceptable, inexcusable thing in the world, where someone else could be like, that's not a big deal. Like, for example, let's say I'm speaking to a client and they put their one finger up and they go, hold that thought. And then they continue talking on the phone. And I go, who do they think they are putting their finger up in my face, telling me to hold my thought like I'm some like non-significant, important human being? I am important, okay? I have a podcast, all right? That makes me somebody, all right? You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I did. You don't put so I'm getting all riled up where someone else can just look at the exact same situation and go, they were in the middle of a conversation and they needed to quickly get my attention. So they put their hand up to immediately get my attention. Let me respect that. And the person who put their hand up could totally have not been, intending or trying in any way to be disrespectful. They just needed to get like medical information from a doctor that was significantly important. So you have to be aware of what the triggers are. And I realized for me, triggers in my life is when I feel like someone would try to make me feel stupid. And this was really, really eye-opening for me because I would have interactions with people. And if somebody would make it seem like I didn't know something or that I was stupid, it would just grind me because it'd be like, well, how am I supposed to know this? This is my first time in this situation, or, whatever the case may be. It would just grind. And I realized that was a trigger for me, from my childhood, because I would got made to feel stupid in many situations, or I chose to feel stupid more appropriately. So when it shows up in my adulthood, I overreact too quickly. So what's great about this is it gives you power. It gives you the power to start saying, where are the social interactions? Where are the dynamics that cause me to overreact, right? And you said there's like 4 things you can do, or 4 phases when you start noticing a trigger has been triggered, I guess. What are those?
Right. So there's 4 things that you can do. One is you can change yourself. Another is you can change the other person, which I think is the hardest thing to do, if even possible. 3, you can leave the situation. And 4, you can change your perspective. And before you do all of that, though, you really need to ask yourself why you're having the trigger. I don't think it's important to know necessarily what the origin of it is. I think it's more important to know and acknowledge that you have that, and that you are overreacting to certain situations and taking things very personally. So why are you taking that personally? Acknowledge it, and also figure out, well, what's your need there? Like, what are you missing? What are you needing from that situation? Is it something you have to provide for yourself? Is it, do you need to be more assertive? Do you need to change the way you think about it? I mean, there's something happening inside of you, and it would do you a lot of good to figure out what that is.
So here's the thing. There's a blind spot to triggers, which I thought was fascinating. And the blind spot is, no, everyone thinks this way, right? So for me, when someone would make me feel stupid, again, I'm using raw language, when I would choose to feel stupid when someone said something, I would say, well, who wants to have someone make them feel dumb? Who wants to be talked to like they're an idiot? Like, everyone dislikes that. Like, so, but for me in my head, it wasn't like, oh, this is an Arel thing. I thought this was just a common courtesy, common decency thing. But you were saying because it's so personal, it seems kind of ubiquitous. Just tell me a little bit more about how to deal with it and address those things.
Right. It feels so personal to you because according to your perspective, you expect things to be a certain way and you think everyone, of course, would react that way. In your situation where you said that you were made to feel stupid and then you changed it to I choose to feel stupid, I think in those situations, a lot of people probably would have felt stupid, but the thing is that having it inside of you and you've carried it with you, you haven't worked through it. So it creates this extreme sensitivity to anyone who would imply that you don't understand something or they say it in a way that you don't get. And the way that they say it to you comes across as very rude, or they're suggesting that you're stupid. For another person, they might just be like, oh, well, I don't get it. And so that's why they're saying it. I mean, it takes a lot of involvement, I think, to reach this point of not taking things so personally. But I think...
Yeah, so, no, it's good. I think I agree with you a lot, though, right? Because the amount of how much we have to evolve, it's a personal journey, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be able to say, not that the world is wrong, or the world is stupid, or the world needs this. You start saying, well, what is it about this that makes me so angry? So if someone treats you or acts a certain way, if you're a kid, you say, put your dishes in the sink, and they say no, and you just lose it. What is it about that? Like, what's being so tender inside of you? And it takes a lot of, it's not easy to look on the inside. It's very easy to go, my kid is bad, or my boss is an idiot, or my neighbors are jerks. It's a very simple, easy answer. But if you flip it around and say, well, what is it about this that's upsetting me? And again, just for clarity, I'm not talking about like someone beating you or abusing you, or someone, hurting, like physically hurting you, or, like if someone holds you down and sticks a needle in your arm and injects heroin into your arm without your consent. I don't want you to be like, well, Arel said, what's my personal thing about that? I guess some people might like heroin. No, like if it's it's the bad thing if there's harm. But if it's a emotional, like, well, what is it about the way this person talks to me that causes me to get so upset? You'll actually find you have more power over your life. Because like you said, changing other people is probably the worst idea in the world. Like, if your strategy is to go out and change other people, we've all tried it at some point. It's a very fruitless endeavor. But if you talked about changing yourself, you can grow and be stronger. So kind of leave us with what's one last thing, like if you were talking to someone, and many of us listening, this may be our first time hearing about triggers. If we were to leave here and to start taking some action to either identify or transform or become better because we're aware of triggers, what would you want people to do with this information?
Well, one is definitely just creating awareness about triggers. So triggers, there's many words for triggers that I've heard. There's wounds, past wounds that you've had, vulnerabilities. So it basically just means there's something that happens inside of you. And if you realize you're in a situation and you're getting really, really upset, like really think about why you're getting upset. In some situations, it makes sense, right? Obviously, in the case of abuse, yes, that's not a good situation. But someone said something to you and you took it so personally. Why? Why are you taking it so personally? And it requires you to really step outside of yourself and to look at yourself and in that moment, remove the blame from the other person. I think it's so easy to blame other people for why you're reacting the way that you are. It's not saying you're not justified in your reaction. It's just saying, well, why is this happening? And as you were saying, it gives you power back in your life. It gives you some sense of having ownership of what's going on with you. And then you no longer are letting other people rule your emotions and letting other people dictate how you're feeling about your life. It really gives you the power back, and it allows you to come from a place of power, but also calmness, especially in the case of parenting. We're so ineffective as parents if we're constantly having tantrums like our kids. And that's what it is. If you have that strong emotional reaction and you're unable to step out of that reaction and you're parenting from that place, there's so many negative consequences as a result. A, your connection with your child is going to be damaged. B, you will feel bad about yourself. C, the kid will feel bad about you. D, you will feel like a victim. They will start blaming you. You'll start blaming them. It starts this whole cycle. So if you can come from a place of understanding your wounds, your vulnerabilities, your triggers, and why you're feeling that way, then you can also choose how you want to react instead of reacting. In those situations, we simply react. There's no space between what's happening and the reaction. So you want to create that space between what's happening, what's being said, and then now you can choose how you want to react, which is an entirely different paradigm. I mean, it's a huge paradigm shift.
So let me ask you this question, Yolanda. When I am going on to iTunes and I'm looking at my reviews, right? Yes. And I'm noticing that the amount of 5-star reviews I have are nowhere near the amount of downloads I'm getting. And I get triggered. And I'm like, what's wrong with these people? We pouring our hearts into them and they haven't left a 5-star review. And I start getting really upset because people listening to this is like, yo, my life is transforming. My life is growing. I'm making more money. I'm happier. I have better relationships. But they don't want to leave a 5-star review. It triggers me. What should I do about that?
A, I think you should ask all the people out there to leave you a review. And then B.
But that's trying to change other people.
That's just asking them to take part in an action. And then B, you need to look inside yourself and say, why do I need so much validation from people?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah. Well, I no longer am going to need your validation. How about that? But if you do want to leave a 5-star review, I'd appreciate it. And remember, this information won't impact your life, but the implementation of it will. And on a serious topic, I think this idea of triggers is truly game-changing. And you start noticing that when you start feeling something happen in you that causes you to really violently blow up, instead of going, that person's such a jerk, like, I can't believe them, whether it's a kid or a human or adult, say, what is this triggering inside of me? And I really appreciate Yolanda being with us and joining us and lending your incredible talent. And thank you for marrying me and having children with me and supporting and loving me. I appreciate you and I like you.
Thank you, Earl, for having me. I appreciate you and I love you. And ditto to all of the stuff that you said. And I really hope everyone out there starts identifying their triggers and their vulnerabilities if you haven't already. And if you are, and you're noticing some great things happening, definitely let Arel know and leave that 5-star review because this is a pretty awesome podcast.
Like the way you think, girl. So hope you all start being more introspective this week. Think about where you had a emotional response, something that was a big boiling point for you, or look for it the next time it happens. Ask yourself, what is this inside of me? What is it triggering? And just try not to say it's the other person. This is how every human with decency would feel, but really look for yourself and you'll get way more power and control. All right. So thank you so much. Make sure to go to artoflikability.com. That's artoflikability.com. Join up for our email newsletter. We send out emails every week now, and we have really cool things that we're going to be sharing and doing. So please be there. And out of here. Sending you a big old high five. You are awesome.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast, The Art of Likability, and reach out with any questions you have. Until next time, remember, my friend, you are awesome.